Hey everyone, Vale here and welcome back to another counterplay video. Today's video is all about Thresh. So Thresh is a versatile support capable of deciding games with his death sentence. Thresh has peel, engage, disengage and works well into most team compositions, making him a solid addition to any draft. Thresh is one of the most fun supports to play too, with his super high skill ceiling and outplay potential. So first off, let's take a look at some of his strengths and weaknesses. Well, for his strengths, Thresh is one of the most versatile supports in the entire game, offering engage, catch potential, peel and disengage. As we mentioned earlier, Thresh works well into all team compositions and is a very safe overall pick at any point in Champ Select. Thresh has one of the most unique allied mobility spells in his Lantern, which can be absolutely pivotal, especially when paired with an immobile AD carry such as Ashe. For his weaknesses though, despite Thresh being so strong, he is incredibly easy to punish, especially in the lane phase. If you miss your hook, you leave yourself very open to being engaged on. Thresh also has a super high skill ceiling and takes some time to get used to, and even the best players can easily have a bad game on him due to him being so dependent on landing those hooks. Thresh is also very reliant on his teammates. He does no damage on his own and needs his allies to be aware of his kit and his playmaking capabilities. So now we're going to have a look at Thresh's ability so you can fully understand how he works. Thresh's passive Damnation causes champions, minions and monsters to drop souls. If Thresh collects these souls, he gains AP and armor. Sometimes you can actually use his tendency to grab these souls to catch him a little bit out of position, and he also can use his Lantern to grab the souls too, so he may waste it to do so, meaning you can punish him for it. Thresh's Q is his hook. Now this is pretty self-explanatory. After a short wind-up, he launches his hook and if it lands it will stun you for 1.5 seconds. If he lands it, the cooldown is reduced by 20% too, so this gives you even more reason to dodge it. Thresh can recast his hook to leap towards you, and then he'll be in prime position to lock you down with his other abilities. Dodging this ability is a fundamental way to play against Thresh. Keep away from the fog of war and ward it if you can, especially in those lane brushes early game. Stay behind minions or tankier allies and try to keep your dodging patterns unpredictable too. Thresh's W is his Lantern. Now this is an incredible ability that can easily save his teammates' lives with mobility, but also it grants him and his ally a shield. Now you can use crowd control, grounding abilities, or even silences to prevent enemies from clicking the Lantern. Alternatively, you can even stand on top of it, making it harder to click, or pop a ward down on it, which is a really cheeky way to block the Lantern command. Now Thresh's E is his Flay. Now he can either drag you towards him or push you away, and often he'll use this to land his hook easier. Try to understand the range of this ability and avoid getting close enough for him to use it. It's pretty obvious if he wants to flay you, as he'll start walking towards you to get in range of this ability. There's also a passive effect on this ability that grants Thresh bonus damage on his auto attacks if he hasn't attacked you recently, which caps after 10 seconds. Thresh will often look to come and auto you every time this is back up, so again, try and stay out of his range so he can't keep abusing this. Thresh's ultimate is the box. He puts down a pentagon of walls that deal damage and slow you by 99% for 2 seconds if you collide with them. Luckily, Thresh can only put this down on top of himself, so if you stay away from him, he can't actually use it on you. It's worth noting that after you collide with one of the 5 walls, any walls after that will only slow you for 1 second and deal no damage, so once you've hit one, don't be too worried about hitting the other ones. Thresh will often combine his ultimate with his Flay, so be super careful as he can easily push you or drag you into the walls, making it very difficult to deal with. So to sum up Thresh's kit quickly, most of his effectiveness depends on landing his hook. But good Threshers will often utilise their Flay and their ultimate to slow you to allow them to hit their hook easier. When they land it, they'll get a reduced cooldown and continuously hook you. Try to play around this ability and punish him whenever it's down. Aside from that, keep him at range so he can't use his other abilities on you. Always be wary of that Lantern too. He may look like he's alone, but he could have a powerful teammate around the corner ready and waiting. His Lantern is also fantastic at escaping early ganks and fights, so always be mindful of it and expect it to be up and ready. So now we're going to have a quick look at Thresh's power spikes. Well, Thresh is best in the early to mid game where he can really play to his strengths. Thresh can look to play aggressively in lane and start snowballing, or roam and influence the map with his catch potential. You want to try and respect his Q and punish him when he misses or wastes it. Keep an eye on his whereabouts and play around those roams. Thresh is weakest in the late game though, whereas opponents have the damage to completely melt him when he tries to go in, and his kit is not quite as strong in those flat out 5v5s. Thresh is more designed to make picks and traps, so he won't be quite as useful as some other supports in teamfights. Try to hard engage on Thresh if he overextends to try and make picks, as he's actually very easy to take down. So how do you deal with Thresh throughout the game? Well, in the early game, Thresh will be able to play very aggressive and look to start snowballing his lane as soon as he can. As with most aggressive supports, you'll need to respect that level 2 all in and make sure you don't get taken out for free. In lane, Thresh will look to throw out cheeky hooks where he can to try to keep those lane brushes warded so you can always see it coming. Staying behind minion waves is a great way to prevent it too. Thresh is also very good at roaming in the early game too, so try and get some good wards in common roaming paths and always ping him missing if you don't see him, or even if he's just died or recalled. This is a common time for supports to roam and Thresh can do it so effectively, so it's very important to warn your teammates and give them as much warning as you can. Make sure you're respecting Thresh's Lantern too. Thresh can easily just take a step back and Lantern his AD carry to safety, so sometimes it's actually better to lock Thresh down instead. In the mid game, Thresh will be looking to make picks and create traps as often as possible. As we mentioned earlier, Thresh is not as good in full-on 5v5s and prefers to take his enemies out before fights to gain that numbers advantage. You'll need to be very cautious of your movements in contested areas and always be considering the fact that Thresh could be ready and waiting. Try to keep up the vision as much as you can against Thresh in the mid game. Wards, blue trinkets, oracle lens and control wards are all very important, as not only can you avoid getting caught by him, but you can actually turn the tables and catch him out instead. Thresh is very vulnerable without his allies, and you can either force all of his cooldowns or sometimes get a free kill on him. In teamfights, remember that Thresh's utility is very strong, but it has a very limited range. Aside from his hook, his E and R are very limited melee range, so if you can keep him at bay, he'll be far less of a problem. Now in the late game, Thresh will attempt to still do the same things that he did in the mid game, however his enemies should have plenty of itemization to deal with him though. Enough penetration to shred through his resistances and defensive items to avoid his engages. This makes Thresh a lot weaker in the late game and he's going to have to play very well to be as effective as some other team fighting supports. Thresh will still be following the same play patterns as his mid game though, looking for picks and controlling vision, so catching him out when he's attempting to do so is still the best way to deal with him. Like as we mentioned earlier, he's very weak without his teammates. Just because Thresh isn't as good in teamfights though doesn't necessarily mean he's not a threat. Thresh's hooks can easily turn and win games, so you still need to respect it when you can. In the very late game, where one fight might decide the fate of the game, one hook is all it takes. It's also very important to remember Thresh's Lantern in the late game though. If you overcommit and burn all of your cooldowns for a squishy target out of position and Thresh Lanterns them away, they could potentially turn around on you and punish you for it. Make sure you're thinking about this throughout the game, and especially so in the late game where it could be far more punishing. Finally, we're going to have a quick look at some itemization that you can build against Thresh. The first one is any movement items. Shurelya's, Gale Force or Hextech Rocket Belt are all perfect options. Thresh is very much limited to his range and often builds Locket of the Iron Solari, so he doesn't have that movement speed boost to catch up to you. Building any items that can help you kite him will definitely come in handy. You could also go for a spell shield item. If you have one of these, it can easily save you from a death sentence, which could make or break a game, especially the later the game goes on. Definitely a great pickup versus any catch champion similar to Thresh. You could also get yourself some tank shredding items. Thresh primarily builds health and resistances throughout the game and gains bonus armor from collecting souls, so make sure you're building some form of penetration or even percentage health damage. Quicksilver Sash is also an amazing choice against Thresh, as it will give you a get out of jail free card if you do unfortunately get hooked. We definitely recommend this item, especially if you're facing other champions with CC too. If you're playing a mage or someone who may not actually want to build QSS, definitely consider taking Cleanse instead. That's going to bring us to the end of this Thresh counterplay video. We hope it helped and we'll see you again soon. Take care.